So in this situation, we've got a floor. It's recently had the Danfoss LX heating mat installed, or the LX cables, and it's not generating any heat. So we're going to do some troubleshooting, and then we're going to do some fault finding, and then we're going to repair the floor. So the first step in troubleshooting is to take an ohm reading of the mat. The power lead comes up the wall into the junction box, and we're going to take an ohm reading at the location where it comes through the junction box. In this case, we can see that the ohm reading is infinite, meaning that we have a complete break through the power leads. So we have the heating cable is severed somewhere in the floor. The next step in the fault finding repair is to use the Danfoss detector. This unit will plug into the mat. We'll attach it to the mat. The unit itself runs off of 120 volts. The detector equipment will put a 10,000 volts through the system and will ultimately burn a new connection in the heating element. So the first step will be to hook up the mat to the detector using the alligator clips from the detector. Care should be taken that there's adequate space between the power leads, and all safety precautions should be taken. Now that the detector is hooked up to the heating mat at the power lead, we're going to turn the system on. First step is to turn the key to the key interlock to turn the system on. Second step is to push the power button to activate the system. When you look at the menu of the detector, there are several screens: burn, trace, and setup. First step always is to go to the setup screen. In the setup screen, we have the opportunity to set the auto stop. This is a current setting. It's a safety precaution. Should normally set between 1 amp and 2 amps. In this case, we're going to leave it at 2 amps. Next, we go to the burn menu. Now, at the burn menu, we go to Start. Here we see the Start screen. At this point, we're in a position to start generating 10,000 volt pulses through the heating element. Okay, now the button on the left gets pushed to start the pulsing. The knob on the right allows us to increase the voltage. So the goal here is to start the burning process, and as we start seeing the amperage go up, we just keep increasing the voltage until we get a good burn. So here we are. So here we're actually sparking through 10,000 volts through the mat and gradually increasing the voltage, burning voltage. Eventually we'll get to the point where we've got a stable burn. We'll have more than 2 amps going through the system, and at that point the detector will shut itself down. Okay, see the amperage activity there, and there we've shut down. Alright, now we know we've established a burn. That means that we've created a new circuit up to the point of the fault. So the next step is to find where that fault location is. Now that we have a complete circuit, we can move on to the next step. Okay, as the next step, we've disconnected the detector so that we can take an ohm reading of the mat. There's 2 reasons to do this. One is just to confirm that we do have continuity and that we have a new ohm reading. So you can see in this case our ohm reading is approximately 22 to 23. The second reason to take the ohm reading is to do a calculation when using a thermal imager as to how much power to put through the mat. Alright, we're going to move on to the next step, which is setting up the tracer. There's one of two steps we can take next. The first step would be to use the tracer that works with the detector and trace along the floor. The second step that we'll cover is using a thermal imager, putting power through the floor and then using a thermal imager to calculate exactly, or to see exactly where the break is. Alright, before using the tracer, the detector needs to be set up, needs to be put in trace mode. So off of the main menu, instead of burn, we pick the trace menu. And now we simply press start. Nope. Which puts us into the tracing mode. The next step is to hook up the tracer itself. Okay. This is the tracing device. It will be hooked up to the detector and will trace the signal outputted by the detector to the new circuit under the floor and will help us locate exactly where the fault is. Alright, now we're using the handheld tracer. We pick one way to go along the floor. We go back and forth in that direction, then we'll go back and forth in the alternate direction. What we're looking for here is a strong signal where we have electrical flow, and we'll see a zero signal where the flow stops. By using a systematic approach, we'll be able to zero in on exactly where the fault is located. The handheld tracer has two features. One is an analog gauge. The other is an audible alert that's heard in the headphones. And between both measures, we can tell where we have an electrical path and where we don't. Once we've narrowed the fault area down to a fairly small area, we can use the smaller handheld device that will give us a more fine reading. And again, we just use that on the floor. This one doesn't have a meter, it's just strictly an audible alert as to where the electricity is flowing. So move this around the area, and this allows us to fine tune in exactly where the fault is. Once we know the correct area of the fault, we put an X, we mark an X, and then we can move towards the step of lifting the tile and making a repair to the cable. For a more sophisticated approach to fault finding and repair, we burn a new circuit using the detector, as you saw previously. Then we use a voltage regulator and a thermal camera. We'll be using the voltage regulator to put through a reduced current through the heating mat, through the new circuit. Then we'll use the thermal imager to find where the heat ends. Wherever the heat ends is where the fault is. Okay, here we're hooking the voltage regulator up to the mat. We're plugging the regulator into a 110 volt receptacle, and we'll be able to put through, in this case, maybe 20 or 30 volts, just enough to create heat that will allow us to use the thermal imager to find the fault. Okay, with the voltage regulator now supplying reduced voltage, the mat will heat up slightly. The mat will heat up enough. With our thermal camera now, we can move along the floor and see exactly where the heat ends. Where the heat ends is where our fault is, and we can start to begin to make the repair. Alright, now we take the thermal imager. We can see the heating element beneath the floor, and we're looking for where the heat stops. There, we can see it right there. Where the heat stops is where we made our burn. We can mark that on the floor very precisely, and now proceed to lifting the towel and making the repair. Very simple.